We'll see her. Donna DeVerona is here tonight. We'll be right back after these words from our sponsors with Mr. Roger Peterson, survivor of TWA Flight 841, after these words from our sponsors. Thank you for being here. Now here's Roger Peterson of Minneapolis, Minnesota, who survived what must have been a terrifying, I don't know how long the thing took, 20, 25 minutes, on board a TWA plane over Michigan on April the 4th. You were sitting there, reading, eating, having a drink or whatever, and everything was fine, and then what happened?
Right. Well, we just finished supper. It was approximately halfway through the flight, and it had been a long day for me. I'd already been up hours, and it was the last leg of a flight, and looking forward to getting home, so I just kind of decided to doze back and go to sleep. And I just kind of put my head against the edge of the plane. I was trying to relax, and all of a sudden this turbulence came. It just happened.
Different from any other kind of turbulence that you and I have both experienced?
Well, not to start with, no. My first impression was no, not at all.
Little
just,
bump, yeah.
you know, variable tracks, a little bump, it'll correct itself. Then I felt the plane descending, you know, dropping. Just, it felt like it was falling straight down to me. I remember somewhat of a lean, although I don't remember it rolling over. But it started descending, just falling straight down, kind of like when an elevator goes up and stops. It was that kind of feeling, you know, where you just brace yourself like
Engines
this.
all running, you hear the motors going?
Yeah. They were still running, right. And then all of a sudden, it felt like the plane was accelerating. There was just this tremendous G-force. It just literally just planted us right back in the seat like this, and muscles in my face were just drawn back, and it was the greatest roller coaster ride I've ever been on. It was that intense.
What point did
Now, I want to tell you something about that, though. At that point, I thought we were climbing. Now, apparently, from what I've read and what I pieced together, we were still falling at that time, nosediving. But it felt to me like we were climbing because I thought I heard the engines come on, and I thought we were accelerating.
Could you physically sense the nose, as they say, going below the horizon? You know, when you ride an airplane, the nose is always up. Did you
never sense that at all? No, I did not.
See ground coming at you?
No, okay, this was about 9 o'clock at night.
Oh, okay, so it's dark,
and it was dark, plus it was cloudy. So I was sitting next to a window and looking, but didn't see a thing.
At what point did you get scared, if at all?
I got scared. Well, I was scared during that part. Not really, because I remember watching. I was sitting in a seat like this, okay, when it happened. I had my legs crossed trying to sleep, and all of a sudden this starts happening. I looked up right away to see if the fasten your seatbelt sign had come on, and it hadn't come on. So I thought, well, I'm not going to fasten my seatbelt until he turns it on.
Exactly.
I figured, well, if it's dangerous, he's going to switch it on. So I didn't really worry, but this sensation kept happening, and it just didn't let go. It was still happening and still happening. What was your question?
I said, were you scared at all? At what point?
Was I scared? Well, I was really scared. Like, this whole thing for me has been in like 3 steps. There was the actual turmoil of this plane nosediving, and then there was landing at the airport, and that for me was the most difficult and the most scary.
I'll get to that. I'm coming to it.
Okay, the third thing, of course, was like the next night when I was home, just going through everything. That was bad.
Now, to clear up the business about the seatbelt, I'm certain that the crew on the flight deck was so busy at that point trying to figure out what the hell's going on here that they don't really have time to push the seatbelt light on. Plus, as the guy says, seasoned travelers keep it on anyway, okay? What about the mood on the aircraft as all of this was happening? Do people start screaming and going crazy and praying to Jesus and that sort of thing?
I prayed like I've never prayed before.
But to yourself?
I didn't pray to myself.
Or were you doing it out loud?
In a group prayer? No, nothing like that. It was by myself, right. As far as screaming goes, I only heard one scream, and that was the lady, Mrs. Merrill, who was in the bathroom. And I was in like row 21, which is, I think in a 727 there are 22 rows, so I was right next to the bathroom. I heard her scream just like help, just one word, and that was it. I heard nobody else scream at all.
So there was no pandemonium?
Not that I saw. In my part of the plane, I could pretty much see the whole plane, right? But in the front half of the plane, I may not have heard people screaming up there. I did not hear anybody scream, no. And to me, people were not panicking. I thought people were basically controlled and cool.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Well, I know there will be people that disagree with me, but from what I saw where I was, no.
I've often wondered about that, you know, about when something like that, when you have really a catastrophe on board an aircraft, whether people are able to maintain control or whether they just lose it and say, hey, this is it. You know,
that's interesting. It's like, that thought came to my mind too, especially during landing, because at that time I realized I had no control over what was happening. You're driving a car and you know you're going to,
you see something coming, yeah, you're a reflex.
But yet you're in control and you still work till the very end, all right? But like in this plane, there was nothing I could do, not a thing, not a thing. You just sat there, and we were in the emergency landing position, the crash position that they had to put us through. That was just unbelievable.
All right, so take me through that, although I want to go back. Well, let me just add one more thing about the flight. I've often wondered this. If there is an emergency on board an aircraft, a serious emergency, does the pilot come on and say, hey, folks, chances are we aren't going to make it? I guess not, no.
He never said that, and that's one thing. I tried to read into what he was saying, just to find out if that's what he was saying. His voice was always very calm and controlled. It's like, it was a very casual voice, low, authoritative. It was easy to listen to, very convincing. Now, after our nosedive, and that lasted, I think, approximately 25 to 30 seconds, this drop.
Yeah, and there was no communication from the flight deck.
Nothing then.
All right,
once he had finally apparently stabilized the plane and we were flying like we should have been, then he came on the intercom system and said something to the effect that we've seemed to have a small problem, but we believe we have it corrected. And that was the first statement he made.
And what did he say after that?
A couple of other things. Then he indicated a bit later on that there was a problem with the landing gear, and we would be making an emergency landing in Detroit.
And that's all he said?
Then he didn't say a whole lot. I mean, he wasn't on the intercom all the time saying this is what's happening and this is what will happen and this is that and so forth. As we got near the airport, though, then he said that we would be making a low pass over the runway so they could inspect the plane. Sure. Yeah. And so we got down very low, and I looked out the window and I could see the ambulances and the fire trucks waiting. Hey, you're not kidding. You know, I was in that plane and I saw those fire trucks and ambulances down there, you know. I didn't want to be in one. Mm-hmm. But yet, you know, they're there for your safety. Mm-hmm. You know, I almost expected the guy I was sitting with, we thought they might foam the runway. And I was looking for that, and I was disappointed not to see that.
If I would have an emergency landing, by Lord, I want my runway foam.
You're right.
Right. I pay for that in my ticket. Get that foam out there.
Well, they did not have a foam, but I was hoping they would, because we knew there was a problem with the landing gear, and all I could picture was this plane touching down on 3 wheels and one giving out, and all of a sudden, like that. Yeah. And I'd hoped that I would see foam on that runway and didn't see it, and that bothered me.
Have you found out why?
No, I don't. I suppose they didn't have money to buy foam in Detroit Airport.
Oh, no, they have.
Do they?
No. Maybe they felt it. Well, I don't know why.
I don't know. I don't know.
Why speculate? We don't know. It'll probably come out in the report. Now, when you're preparing for an emergency landing, this, I suppose, is when the flight crew gets busy. Instructing you on, isn't it? Right. You put your head down between your knees, neckties off.
Tom, we went through that whole thing, and it's just so unreal. I've seen it in movies, on TV, you know, where they're obviously, it's a movie, they're faking it. Mm-hmm. Okay, but this was real. This was so real. It said, this is the emergency position. We will land like this. Okay, and they started, and everybody in the plane does this. Put your hand over your heads like this, and get your head way down in your lap, right down like this, and undo the neckties, everything out of the pocket, anything sharp. We had to take our shoes off and stick them in the compartment in front, and mine wouldn't fit because I had on these boots, so I didn't know what to do with them.
Yeah.
And it was just so unreal. It's like I
found
myself.
You don't want to stand up and say, "Look, I need help with my boots. Somebody help me."
No, that wasn't it. The thing that really bothered me was this. though. It's like I couldn't believe it was happening. Yeah. It's like this is only for the movies. It's not for real.
It's a dream. It doesn't happen. Yeah.
But it did. It really did. And here I was sitting. I didn't want to accept it, but I knew I had to.
Tell the part where the pilot says, "Now, when we impact."
Oh, okay, something like that.
Have a little sip of water there. Steady yourself. Are you more nervous here than you were on the plane?
The vodka you're going to put in this?
No. We don't have that here. We kid it. Are you more nervous here than on the plane?
Right now I am, yeah.
Okay, you're doing just fine. Please believe me.
All right, thanks.
Okay, so now the pilot says when we impact instead of when we land.
Okay, now he was telling us this was also part of the plan. Once we landed, we were to have exited through those emergency landing chutes that you slide out on, okay? Now, we didn't do that, but that's what they intended for us to do. They didn't tell us this is maybe how we're going to leave the plane. They said, this is how we will leave the plane. And to preface this whole thing, the pilot said, and I'll never forget this, Tom, he said, upon impact, and he finished his sentence. And that's the word, those are the 2 words he used, upon impact, and that is, it's reverberating in my brain even right now. I mean, that really seemed to bring things together. Nothing happened. It was a fine landing, no problems. What?
Yeah, I know the expectation. I mean, you're sitting there, and do you ever find yourself? I do this. If we're in heavy turbulence, you almost you're trying to hold it up. You know, I'm at the seat, and I'm just saying, let me help you, guy. Let me help you hold this thing up. You know, and I'm sure that when you were landing, you were trying to help that plane down. Or maybe you didn't have...
I wasn't trying to help that plane down. I mean, I knew it was going down. There was no doubt about that.
Nobody's ever left one up there. That's very true.
That's right.
Yeah.
This guy's sharp, isn't he?
Yeah. Now listen. When you landed and it was all fine, was there this in the...
Okay, let me tell you something a little bit before that, though. I mean, it was the actual landing the plane. The pilot had given us enough facts. This whole landing procedure...
By the way, he sounds like a hell of a guy, the pilot.
Great guy. I mean, my hat's off to him.
Yes, sir. I mean, I'd tip mine if I had one.
He pulled a maneuver. He thought up something that wasn't apparently in any instruction manual, which is right now that's what they give the credit for the plane landing safely to, the fact that he dropped the landing gears or had the landing gears dropped.
Right. In fact, that's what arrested, according to the article.
Well, he tried other things in the articles and what you've read in the paper, the spoilers, the flaps, and so forth, and nothing worked.
The pilot, now hold it, let's get his name right here. Harvey Hoot Gibson. Hoot Gibson, okay.
Hoot.
He struggled desperately to regain control. The airspeed indicator neared Mach 1, about 660 miles per hour. Finally, he ordered the co-pilot, Scott Kennedy, to lower the landing gear, a last-ditch tactic to increase the jet's drag. It worked maybe 2 seconds before crashing, Gibson said. Wow.
Yeah, I did some calculating on the plane on the way over today, and I figured it must have been about 6 seconds, not 2. But even so, the point is it was that close.
Yeah, well,
it really was.
For 4 seconds, you're not going to call the pilot incorrect.
Nickels
and dimes, right. What's a few seconds among friends? Let's get this damn thing on the level, for heaven's sake. I've been known to stand up and say, well, the guy whose number is up, please get out of here. You know? I get crazy.
No, I thought my number was up that night.
But was there a round of applause at the...
Once we landed, there was a quiet but a definite round of applause. Very short and very sweet.
Yeah. Now,
praise the Lord, things like that.
Yeah. When did you fly into here? Was that today? How did you feel when that plane was...
See, I got on this plane again that night, a couple hours after that had happened. So I thought about it, but I wasn't worried.
Because there were some people, I think it's in the, maybe it's in this account.
One man did drive home. He refused to take the plane. He rented a car and went to Minneapolis on the road.
So anyway, you don't have fear of flying out of it or anything like that?
No.
Fantastic. What do you think happened? Do you have any theories?
I tried to piece together some things. You know, I guess everybody tries to decide what happened and come up with a solution or something. And from what I've read, this is what I think may have happened right now. The plane was on autopilot, as far as I know, which is flying itself. There may have been some type of slight mechanical failure, which the pilot sensed, and apparently then decided to take control of. It's only a natural reaction. Now, the pilot had also indicated to us, something like 20 minutes before this whole thing happened, that we would be late in Minneapolis, arriving late, because we were flying into a headwind of 100 knots, is what he said, which is a mighty strong wind. So just given that fact, it would be easy, once he took control, if there was any kind of turbulence, and especially if something, even a slight malfunction in the plane did occur, it would be easy to lose complete control of the plane.
Remember this when you're flying, okay? Never put your head against the side of the airplane.
Why is that?
Well, you said at the beginning of our interview that you were going to sleep and you put your head against the side of the airplane. Not to do that anymore. Planes do not like to have heads put against their sides.
But I couldn't put it against the other side. There was nobody sitting there. It was falling over.
Okay. I'm happy that you were able to make the trip out here, Roger. I really enjoyed hearing about this because, as I say, when people read this, we all fly on planes and you wonder what they tell you and how they conduct themselves and how you conduct yourself. And I think everybody did very, very well on board that flight.
They did, but it was such a hairy experience, realizing that you could die, you know, and I found my peace with God, and I've got to say that I really did. You know, I got ready for the worst. Tom, I didn't want to, man. I fought, even praying, I thought, no, I don't want to die. I've got 1,000 reasons to live and none to die. But, you know, I accepted it, and I was ready.
Turned out the right way. Roger, thank you very, very much.
Hey, Tom, anytime.
Okay, yeah, but next time, happier stories.
All right, great.
Roger Peterson from Minneapolis, Minnesota. We will continue after these announcements from the NBC television stations.